Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Well, good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack. The malls are packed with children who are trying to get to see St. Nicholas. Santa Claus at the mall is a reproduction of sorts of a original saint of the church. His name was St. Nicholas, and St. Nicholas often doesn't have any resemblance to the modern day Santa Claus. However, he has some, the modern day Santa Claus has some habits and some other things that may go back to these legends. So to help us sort through all of the myths, the legends, and the man of Santa Claus, I have Bill Palmer. He wrote a book on Santa Claus, which I read many years ago, and I picked up again this Christmas in order to enjoy the season. So, Bill, welcome to Encounter.
Thank you very much.
So, let's start off by talking about where did the modern Santa come from, and how do we arrive at the mall Santa?
Yeah, it's a long story. It's in Santa Claus we have a figure probably better known than any other real or mythical figure on Earth. So it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And actually, there are strands of the story of how we get to modern Santa Claus from a number of different directions. I'm going to start way back in prehistory. Yep, it's always a good place to start, right?
It is. It really is.
In shamanic religions of the northern parts of the earth, there is a very ancient tradition of the personification of winter as an old man with a white beard, wearing furs, often with bells on them. Old Man Winter, Grandfather Frost, a personification of winter, and he was generally, surprisingly, a benevolent figure. He was in touch with the spirit world, watched over the herds that the people were hunting, made sure that the people would survive the very difficult winters of the northern world. And believe it or not, that kind of figure still exists in parts of Siberia among the Eskimo, so that goes back a long way. It's almost recognizable as a Santa Claus figure with the outfit and the flying in the air and all that.
Right.
The bulk of our Santa Claus lore goes back to St. Nicholas, blessed be his memory.
Right.
He was a 4th century bishop of a city called Myra on the coast of Turkey. It was then a part of the Eastern Roman Empire and Greek-speaking, and a very prosperous city. St. Nicholas was known for his great care for the people in his diocese. He was both a secular ruler and a religious ruler, as they often were back in those days. There are a couple of stories that are central to our modern Santa Claus that go back to legends of the 4th century and stories of St. Nicholas, and I'm going to tell you a couple of them. There are a couple of themes here. One is how St. Nicholas became the patron saint of children. One of the stories is that 3 little boys in Myra disappeared. and there was a hunt all over the city for them. They were just little kids.
Right.
And St. Nicholas had a vision that a very bad man, a butcher, had taken the boys, thrown them into a barrel of brine, and had killed them and was salting them in order to sell their meat to unsuspecting customers. Well, St. Nicholas heard about this. The bad butcher was apprehended. He brought the three little boys to life. I guess they smelled like pickles when they got home.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, and he was known as a great protector of children. And there were three little girls of the city whose father was a friend of Nicholas's, but had gone bankrupt. And in that era, if a girl did not have a dowry, she could not be married and would be sold into something like slavery, a poor girl. So anonymously, St. Nicholas filled 3 bags with gold coins one for each daughter, threw them through the window, where they landed in the shoes of the little girls, which were drying by the fireside. And he did it anonymously, and the little girls were saved from a life of slavery. That's children. His care for foreigners and different people. There was a famine in the province, and a number of ships from another city, where the people were starving even more severely, came into the harbor of Myra, desiring to buy wheat from the city of Myra. And the officials there wanted them to leave. We don't know these people. We have to take care of our own people. I'm sorry, we're going to send them home. And Nicholas intervened. He said, these are sons and daughters of God, as are we. And I want us to empty out our storehouses of grain and give it to them. And I promise you that God will provide for us. So that was another great miracle of St. Nicholas. The wheat was transferred to the strangers, to the foreigners, and the granaries of Myra were miraculously restored to fullness. Another time, again, Myra was a great port city, and sailors from the city were out at sea in a terrific storm. They called upon their protector, Nicholas, and Nicholas appeared on board and led the ship safely into harbor. He was constantly protecting the city from pirates, from marauders, and taking care of the poor and the children of the city. And he was greatly remembered and greatly revered for that. When he died, traditionally on the 6th of December, which is still his feast day, his bones were placed in the Cathedral of Myra, where they were a place of pilgrimage for people and a place where miracles took place of all kinds, healings and restorations of disabilities, all kinds of stuff like that. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but in the centuries following, Myra became very much a Muslim city. And the cathedral at Myra fell into disrepair. In the 1100s, crusaders returning from the Holy Land stopped in Myra, took the bones, and brought them to Italy, where they were placed in a tomb in the city of Bari in southern Italy, where most of them still remain, although little bits and pieces of St. Nicholas are all over the world.
As they should be.
As they should be. Yes. As they should be. My brother told me this, that after Mary, the mother of Jesus, the most common church name in Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and Roman Catholic world are St. Nicholas, parish of St. Nicholas. They're all over the place. So
Wow.
his, again, in Bari, it was also a place where people came to pray to St. Nicholas, and miracles occurred there. It was also a port city, and sailors seeking his protection spread, his message all over Europe, and he became established as a very popular saint, known to love and protect children, to shield people in danger, to welcome foreigners, and partly because of its close association and date to Christmas time. He became associated with Christmas and with the giving of gifts to children. And across Europe by the Middle Ages, especially in northern and central parts of Europe, he became a gift giver on the night of before his feast, on the 5th of December. And he would show up in households in person. Very
Right.
often. Often it was the parish priest or a friend of the family dressed in the full regalia of a Roman Catholic bishop. He would knock on the door. There would be a lot of excitement among the children of the house. He would come in. Often a dark and scary character would follow him.
Yeah.
Kind of as a silent threat to the children that they better behave. And Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, would quiz them on their catechism, ask their parents if they had been good children, give them a blessing, and usually leave throwing nuts and candy for the children. That night, they would put their shoes by the hearth or sometimes outside, and they would be filled with little gifts.
So Bill,
Yeah.
what we're seeing here is like a marriage that happens between the shaman that you spoke of before, and it gets wedded with a real human being like Saint
Right.
Nicholas. And then from there we begin to develop the modern our understanding of the modern Santa Claus.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about how from your perspective that syncretism kind of works within our celebration of Christmas? Because it's not just Saint Nicholas. Then it's bigger than Saint Nicholas. It's something more primal than that, right? I mean,
It is. It
yeah.
is. I mean, Christmas has its roots in very ancient earth magic, which is beautifully wedded to the miracle of the incarnation of Jesus on earth, which sanctified the holiness of the earth even stronger. And the symbols of Christmas very much are that the Christmas tree, the evergreens, kissing under the mistletoe, and the Santa Claus figure. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how he transformed into a Santa Claus recognizable to us. It was the Dutch were a great seafaring nation.
Right.
And although they were strictly Calvinist by the 17th century, he was still coming to children's houses in the Netherlands, where he still does, in the full regalia of a Roman Catholic bishop. Dutch settlers brought the celebration of St. Nicholas Day to America, specifically to lower New York State, to New Amsterdam. And Dutch families in New York kept the tradition alive for generations, and yet Santa Claus and St. Nicholas were virtually unknown elsewhere. In 1821, a professor of Hebrew and Greek at Columbia University, a man named Clement Moore, son of an Episcopal bishop, and a family man, had a little Christmas party where he read a poem that he had written, which we know as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas,"
Right.
but was officially known as "A Visit from St. Nicholas." And he describes a Santa Claus very familiar to us,
Right.
In a sleigh with reindeer, in a red suit trimmed with fur, coming down the chimney, filling the children's stockings while visions of sugar plums danced in their head. Incidentally, his wife was from the Van Cortlandt family, one of those old Dutch families that would have kept that tradition alive, although it was moved from the 6th of December to Christmas. Anyway, a friend of his at the party asked for a copy of the poem. And the next Christmas, it was published anonymously in the Troy Sentinel. And it just went in the sense of the early 19th century, it went viral. It appeared all in magazines and newspapers all through the English-speaking world. And it was anonymous. He, Moore was a very serious man, a very serious professor of ancient languages, but he did eventually take credit for it. And he is the author. At the same time, this was a time when media, in a simpler way, was expanding. More and more people could read, more and more newspapers were being published and books. So it was spreading all over the place. There was a famous illustrator, Thomas Nast, who created hundreds and hundreds of images of Santa Claus.
Was that with the Saturday Evening Post?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that was one of his early places. And
right.
All over the place. And over time, Santa Claus grew from being a right jolly old elf more toward a full-sized figure.
Right.
But those images spread all over the place.
Now,
and,
didn't Coca-Cola have something to do with that too?
That's a little later. I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
But Santa Claus appeared regularly in army camps during the Civil War to both Northern soldiers and Southern soldiers. And they brought Santa Claus home with them. And he spread into every Victorian home in America, along with the Christmas tree. And again, he's already pretty recognizable, but it was the Coca-Cola Company in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that really created the iconic Santa Claus that we know, the red cheeks and the white beard and the beautiful suit, drinking a bottle of Coke under the Christmas tree. And it shows how Santa Claus became a real figure of modern advertising at Christmas time, and he was used to sell toys and cars and presents, and it became a very very commercialized, very far from the humble saint of the church that he was, but still carrying along that symbolism of giving and care for children and bounty into the present.
Bill Palmer is the author of Santa Claus, which is, I believe, the name of the book. It's right there in his hand, Santa Claus, Saint, Shaman, and Symbol.
Right.
And how can people find copies of your book?
Well, it's easily available on Amazon. Just look for the title, Santa Claus by Bill Palmer, and you'll find it. And in its paperback edition, it's currently costs about $5.50. So for the price of
they can get it
donut and coffee.
Yeah. So that is the best place to find it is at Amazon.
Yes.
All right. Very good. So So it's interesting to me how the modern version of Santa as a portly, bowl, what is it, belly full of jelly, or how does it go? Like something like
He
that.
shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
Bowl full of jelly, and
Right.
then you have this version of Santa where compared to Saint Nicholas, who probably was austere and used to very fasting, famine, as you were talking about it. Someone who wanted to make sure everybody else was fed before he got fed. There was a number of things that were part of that story. It's so interesting to me how then when we want to picture Santa, we want to see Santa in a you know as a symbol of abundance, and therefore, as a rotund figure with, and the rest of that kind of thing. So,
And Joe, a white European man.
right, white European too, right?
Right.
Instead of the Turkish Santa, which probably looked more of like a person of color.
Right. He
It
was an Eastern Mediterranean man of dark complexion and features, I'm sure.
and some of the iconography of that came out of that, post, even picture Saint Nicholas as a
Right.
darker
Right.
figure. It's interesting to me how we do this with people. We've done this with Jesus too. I mean, where you take a Middle Eastern figure like Jesus, and we all of a sudden make him a white man. It's very, very interesting to me how that, syncretism has a tendency toward creating legends and myths that kind of meld with our current understandings of ourselves. So, can you are there other things that kind of, that are in our modern day version of Christmas that are the same, that have done the same thing?
Well, I think I know. I think I know what you're talking about. For example, the not to get political necessarily, but the so-called war on Christmas that um, some people claim liberals are waging, so-called liberals are waging. The Christmas that they're talking about is very much the Christmas of uh, white middle class Christian Americans. Um, and not all of us are any or all of those things. And yet, Christmas, in its spirit, is everyone's
Right.
and should be spread to everyone. To suggest that it's nationalistic uh, or that Santa Claus is a white man. A couple of years ago, there was literally controversy over that when scholars first wanted to remind people that he was basically a Middle Eastern guy. Uh, People got very bent out of shape about that. So,
It's interesting. I had a conversation with somebody about Saint Augustine, and Saint Augustine was from Egypt.
yeah,
So when you and I said, he's probably not a white man. Probably, if even if he was African, he probably had darker complexion.
sure.
And when I said this to a group of people, I had three people come to me afterwards and say, no, he was obviously a white man. And I go, well, it's not historically accurate. So it seems to me as if, when we're put up against facts, we're put up against true history, that oftentimes we tend to say, no, it's not that, it's this, right? So because this one makes me feel more comfortable about myself than this one does. And I think that, the way that you present it in your book, you kind of show how Saint Nicholas is a complicated figure, and it's he is a figure of generosity and care for the poor, um, and also for the environment, and also for Muslims, and for your Muslim neighbor, or sailors, or farmers, and all that kind of thing. He is that. And yet, there is something in the modern Santa which kind of brings us back to the spirit, at least, of that person, right? So, we need to, we don't want to get rid of Santa, but we need to know that Santa is bigger than the mall Santa, right? I
Right.
mean, we need to.
Right. Right. Because often, Joe, the true stories are more interesting, and they're more multicultural. They're more bringing people together in that way. And that's very much the spirit of Christmas. It's certainly very much the spirit of the baby whose birth we are recalling.
So my guest has been Bill Palmer, and we've been talking about his book on Santa Claus, Shaman, and Saint, and what was the other word? Symbol. And all of those things go into making up our current understanding of Santa Claus. So as we conclude, one of the earlier version of this show, we had an actual Santa Claus on with us when we were talking about Saint Nicholas. And his name was Johnny Fuller, and Johnny has gone on to his greater reward. He's gone on to meet Jesus in person. So all of these myths and everything else come together. So I wanted to dedicate our show today to Johnny Fuller, and to how he made so many people happy because of his understanding of Santa. And I want to thank Bill Palmer for being on again. Thank you, Bill, for helping.
Happy to be here. Merry Christmas, Joe.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you as well. And I hope you and your partner have a very Merry Christmas. And,
thank you. You too.
That we have that snow that you look forward to every year.
I hope so.
All right, thank you. And for all of you, I hope you all are good and gentle with each other. Have a Merry Christmas.